I am Daniel Lucas and welcome to Abstract Essay. Abstract Essay is created to empower artists like us, just like my guest today. He is the author of Manhattan Rising. He's an author
Yes.
and, of course, an artist too. No other than Mr. Sal Cosenza.
Hello, Daniel. Hello, everyone.
Hello, welcome to Abstract Essay.
Great to be here.
Thank you so much for being my guest. And I would just want to plug in people. Book 101 review on its 5th season already. Please do tune in to my feature author of the month of December. She is award-winning author, no other than Miss Cat Rambo. And tune in for my feature author of the month of January 2025. He is a best-selling and, of course, award-winning author. So tune in, people. Book 101 review and, of course, my interview with Mr. Sal Cosenza about Manhattan, the Rising War. So, Mr. Sal, can you please introduce more about yourself?
Yes, so I'm a painter. I've been painting since I was very young. I'm also a professor of interior design history and interior design studio and architecture at ASU, which is Arizona State University. And as you mentioned, I'm an author. My first book, and here's my shameless plug once more, is
Yes.
called Manhattan, the Rising War, which is a sort of novelization of some of my paintings.
So, welcome to Abstract Essay. Can we scrutinize many of your paintings then?
Please scrutinize me. I need scrutiny. No. So should I share screen again?
Yeah, please.
Okay, let me hit share. Let me go here. So I have a series here. I don't know if you can see all of them together right here.
Yes, we can
Maybe
see
I
it.
could. Yeah, so this is the series that sort of inspired the book that I wrote, right? And it stretches from 2002 to 2020. It's a sort of reaction to 9/11, this story. But again, the buildings, here they are. These are the buildings from the book, but here they are in painted form, right? So this is the Empire State Building, Chrysler Building. These two are lovers, right? They're an architectural power couple. Here you have Lady Liberty, who's sort of the Yoda of the city, right?
Yes.
Sort of the wisest one of all of them. You have UN building here, who's sort of obviously the diplomat, right? But you also have these various other characters, a whole cast of different architectural characters that populate the city. And they live and coexist with humans. So here you have the people, right? So there's this symbiotic relationship between human and building in this story. So again, it's a series of 5, and each one has its own sort of plot, right? Plot-driven component. But I would classify these paintings as surrealist, but they're also sort of fantasy, right? Each one was made using acrylic paint. I've never really used oil too often. I'm not really comfortable with it, but with acrylic paint, I love to work with it.
So, how do you decide on the color palette for your painting?
Well, so for this series, and actually, let me go to the first. So each one has a sort of dominant color, right? If you could kind of see it from here, that happened way back when. I would say around 2000. Well, I did this one in 2005. I knew that this one was going to be the brightest one, the background. This one was dark, right? And actually, here, wait, to answer your question, actually, the sky, the sky in each piece is what determines the mood and the color palette. So in this one, you have this very sort of uplifting looking sky, right, with very pungent, bright colors. But then there are these sort of tears in the sky that are alluding to potential darkness to come, right? And that's why in this one, it's a dark sky and sort of, you know how they talk about war as being a theater, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so I sort of took that literally and I turned the sky into almost like a curtain call or something, right? This backdrop of war going on, and it's very sort of stage-like, theatrical. And then in this one, the sky is frenetic, it's hellish, Hellish, right? This one I remember was inspired by Michelangelo and the fresco that he did at the Sistine Chapel on the back wall, the Last Judgment fresco. He did a depiction of hell that I was inspired by, and I sort of created a variation on that sky that Michelangelo did, right? And then in this one, the city below, here's Manhattan Island, it's been conquered by the antagonists, the villains in this story. And so the sky is very dreary. But at the same time, you have the buildings staging a reprisal, right? They're coming back. And so there's this sort of wind that's pushing the smoke away, and you have just the presence of light starting to peek through, right? And then lastly, here's a sky, the final piece. This is a celebratory painting, right? There are parades, there's reconstruction of the buildings happening. So the sky naturally is also very optimistic, right? Sort of forward looking. So again, the sky drives the color palette, it drives the mood of each piece.
Yes, so very, very colorful. So, what role does light and shadow play in your work?
Well, I usually have a single source of light in the background, an overarching one. So in this case, it's that light source. Um, but it's kind of difficult to say. There's not like one or two focal points. These are very busy paintings, as you can gather, right? Um, but I would say if I was to look at this one, for example, I think the eye works in a triangulated fashion. So it starts at this point. It then might go somewhere around here and look at what's going on, the plot, the action going on here. And then it might pivot and come over here and see, the Freedom Tower, the One World Trade coming out of the sand, right? So there's a triangular sort of narrative at play here. Whereas this one, I think the role of light starts here, right? Your attention, your focus begins here, but then it starts to get bookended by this framework, right? These buildings are very much framing the action, right? The moon, the Empire State's light, the light hitting the buildings themselves is also sort of circular and draws your attention back to the center of this painting. This one, I think the heaviest part is over here, right? The fact that you have these ghost-like buildings with this this silhouette almost of these buildings. So that's the dominant point of interest. But then again, these buildings are sort of, refocusing your attention to this area. So I use light as a directional tool. Um, but as you can also see, there's a lot of light, right? There's a
Yes.
lot of sort of secondary and tertiary focal points throughout each of these paintings. These paintings are 30 inch by 40 inch, and there's one behind me, right? This is the last one. So they're chock full of detail, right? I had so many little, like 1 to 2 hair brushes that I would use. Um, and I just wanted it to be that if you look at each painting, you get lost in it, right? You sort of like stare at it and you start to discover new little details. So they had to work at close range, but they also had to work by stepping back 5 feet or 10 feet.
So how do you plan the layers of your painting from the background to the details?
I love that question. Yeah, and I think about that a lot. I layer from it's very it's kind of obvious, but I layer from the backmost element to the foremost element, right? So usually the sky is the first thing that I paint.
Yes.
I paint the whole sky. So with this one, I have a bunch of photos of it in production. But I had, this was all painted underneath. There were clouds there and everything. And I sort of was at peace with this idea that eventually it's going to get covered up, but I'm glad that it's also there, right? I'm glad that I did not paint around the buildings because that sky has to sort of exist on its own. It has to behave naturally. So to get these clouds in there, you have to just sort of, like, here's an example, right? I have a building right here, but this cloud in the background, that was all one continuous piece at one point, right? But I'm glad that it looks this way, if that makes sense. But yeah, I
Makes
work
sense.
background to foreground.
That's awesome. So how do you know when a painting of yours is finished?
That's another really, really good question. um, I mean, you paint also?
Actually, I do digital painting. Just
Okay,
like just like our background, that's what I did digital abstract essay.
nice. Yeah, and it's a hard question, right? Like, when do we
Yes.
know when to stop? I mean, this kind of painting, I call this a kitchen sink painting because it's got everything but the kitchen sink in it. Uh,
Yes.
but I think so. I usually create sketches beforehand. I like this series had a ton of drawings and sketches, so a lot of pre-concept, concept drawings were involved, and that sort of helped me figure out when to stop, right? I knew that with this piece, I had to have certain elements uh, painted, and then once they were in, then it's sort of, you take a step back, you look at any sort of minor details. Like I remember late in the game, I added these searchlights, which I thought added some, kind of nice drama, added an extra uh, level of excitement to the parade. Here's the parade here. It sort of starts back there, and then the road, everything gets closer, so everything gets bigger. But yeah, it's a really hard question. Like, when do you stop? When is when is enough enough?
Yes.
Like in life in general, right?
Definitely. There's always modification. Oh, I want this better more. I want this side piece like this. So, what challenges do you face during painting process?
Well, time, right? The availability of time, it's hard. It's becoming harder and harder for me to paint. I only painted two paintings this past year in 2024. Um, in my heyday, I would paint maybe 8 or 9, right? So it's difficult to find time to paint, I realized.
Yes.
Um, and also just subject matter. I've for me, like I've created about 150 paintings at this point. And I'm not running out of ideas, but I'm waiting on that next really good idea. And if it's not something that I'm not 100% interested in, then I'm not going to paint it. Right?
That's
So
awesome.
I don't know. It's kind of a conundrum. I need to just like pick up a paintbrush and just get a canvas and just start. I think, right? Because new ideas will come. I have a drawer of unused ideas, sketches, drawings of all sorts. But I'm at a point where, I'm really serious about these paintings. And if I'm not, again, if I don't believe in them, then I'm not going to pursue them. These
Definitely.
these obviously I believed in, right? I believe in these a great deal. Um,
Yes.
and I have, I have others, as you can see, like I believed in these as well.
Yes. Can we feature them week by week? Let's scrutinize them. Let's dig them. How do you do it? Starting next week. You said, well, you have
Yeah,
150 piece like that, so let's do one by one. Digging. What are you thinking? So what's your emotion when you're doing this? And a lot more to discuss if you're
yes.
interested.
I
Okay,
love that. Thank
that
you.
awesome. So we are set next week, the same time, the same day.
Same time,
Saturday.
same place.
Yeah,
Yes.
same place.
2
That's
p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m.
yeah.
Mountain Time.
Yes, yes, yes.
And
So how?
that's, what is that, 5 o'clock Eastern Time? I think.
Yes, yes. They are
Yes.
4 or 3 ahead. So
Yeah.
when you're doing your painting, what emotion or mood in your artwork?
I go through all kinds of moods. Looking at these two on the bottom right. I don't know if you could see my cursor,
Yes.
but this Neon Blues series, I was going through more of a melancholy phase. Um, it was a it was a bad online dating scenario. I'm not ashamed to say it. No. Um, it didn't go how I was hoping. Let's put it that way. So what it, so what did I do? I turned it into art, of course, right?
Yes,
Turn
yes.
your emotions into
To
something. Make
art,
make
yes,
make something productive out of them. So
definitely.
melancholia, frustration. This one has to do. This is actually this character is fighting a cancer cell, um, and it also could be, you know, assumed to be a COVID cell. This was during 2001 or 2021. I made that piece. Here's another one. You have the buildings in a separate universe of a separate version of Manhattan where these two buildings are in love. They're sitting on a bed of roses, right?
So you give title to your paintings.
Oh yes, titles. I I agonize over them.
That's
This one's called Domestic New York, The Bed of Roses. This one is Roses Never Lie, right? This is
oh,
Monday morning, 8 a.m. This was sort of my experience working in New York
mm.
as as a young architectural designer. Walking to work was kind of it felt like this. It was loud, there was but I loved it, right? But there was cigarette smoke everywhere, right? I had a briefcase like this. Um, so yeah, here's a therapy scene, which I'm very pro therapy.
That's awesome.
So yeah, so again, it's a boring answer, but every emotion is explored and, I think it's important. It's kind of like journal entries.
Yes, definitely.
Right.
So, Mr. Sal, what would be your advice for those people out there want to be an artist like you, like us?
Yeah, just start, right? Just create stuff. I always tell people there's no such thing as good work and there's no such thing as bad work. I think if the work is honest and the work is saying something, whatever you want to say about the world or your thoughts on the world or your opinions, get it out there, get it on a surface, get it on a canvas, a piece of paper. Um, and the best thing is you don't have to show it to everyone when you're done, unless you want to, right? So
Yes,
I would just say make the work. Don't
do it.
be don't be ashamed.
Yes, and share to the world. You know what I did to my digital painting, Mr. Sal? I did compile them and publish it on Amazon. So I do it
Nice.
abstract essay volume by volume. It's a volume one. universe. Volume 2, let's say, what else? Planets. I forgot all those. I think I have 365 volumes of abstract essays. So I did
Wow.
when I finished doing all compilation and published them. I did a podcast like this, abstract essay, to to
Yeah,
encourage artists out there to share your talents to the world. At least you give mark to the world that I have something. I did create something to be part on Earth, right? Yes.
exactly. Exactly. And that's amazing that you do that, by the way, and keep doing that.
Thank you.
And you
Thank
know,
you.
there's a reason why we have, there's a reason why we know about figures from history. It's through the work that they create, right?
Yes.
Or through the work that they force others to create for them. You know, look at the pyramids of Giza, right?
Yes.
But the fact that we have these pieces and we have works by Leonardo da Vinci, we could sort of tell something about their personality by the work they produced. So if we did not have that work, we would be left in the dark. We would have question
Yes.
marks, right? We wouldn't be aware of our own history as a human force, as a species.
Definitely. So, Mr. Sal, what will be your short-term and long-term goals in being an artist?
Well, for me right now, it's my short term is finding that next great idea that I will, as I mentioned, right, that I will totally be enamored by and want to paint. And I haven't found it just yet. I'm looking. I have a couple of ideas, but that's short term. Long term, produce more paintings that I'm proud of. Um,
Yes.
I would love to. I've done a few examples of this, but how could my work sort of promote the greater good? How could it sort of help solve an issue? Um, I've done like fundraisers in the past for various organizations that I believe in. I love that idea of using art as a form of empowerment. Um, so I'd like to do more of that. And then I think also writing my next novel, but getting those paintings to happen in conjunction. And
Speaking of,
and keep
yes.
teaching. And I'm
Oh,
teaching.
yes. Of
Yeah.
course. Professor.
Oh
Speaking
yes.
of Speaking of fundraising, please do support my Food 101, not Food 101, my Book 101 Review Foundation. We're helping less fortunate children all over the world. We're giving education for less fortunate children because they are our generation to generation to come. Let's give them good
Yes.
education so that our generation will be like us.
Yes,
Artists,
and
author.
please send me the link to that. I would like to contribute.
Please, please. Thank you so much for all the authors that contributed to my foundation because I'm really dedicated to help less fortunate children because my aim to give them education, to give empower them because as I
Hmm.
said, they are our future generation. So to sum up our discussion, Mr. Sal, how do you reflect on the critic, your works after it's completed?
After the work is completed, I think, I'm shocked that I created it and I finished it, number one.
Me too.
Again, the lack of time, right? Or this painting behind me
Yes.
it took me about 7 years.
7 years.
Yeah, and because I'm very slow with it, I was meticulous, but I also lived in New York and I came here in Arizona. I worked on this only in Arizona, so I was not here all the time. So a lot of this one went through development hell, as they call it, right?
Yes.
Where it just took forever. Um, but so when this was done, I was like, oh, thank goodness
I'm
we
done.
had it. I finished it during lockdown, the pandemic lockdown. So it was kind of like I was forced to finish it, right? We had nothing else to do really.
Yes.
But, and then when one is done, when I'm done with it, then it's like, okay, what's the next one? What am I going to do next? Because there's that rush of, you know, it's kind of like you get a high from working on one. Like the
Yes.
process of making it is more exciting than finishing, I think, than being done with the painting.
Yes, my abstract essay is also a product of pandemic, so
Mm.
we're the same. So, Mr. Sal, can you please invite our listeners to support your, well, book, your novel?
Oh, yes. So if you'd like to support my book, it's called Manhattan: The Rising War. It's available on a small little mom and pop shop called Amazon. I don't know. But if you're local to Arizona, it's at Changing Hands Bookstore in Tempe, Arizona. It's also on, you know, Walmart.com and BarnesandNoble.com and all of those other giant conglomerates. But I appreciate the support. I put a lot of my life into this book. And so, again, I hope whoever gets it and reads it, I hope you
Yes,
enjoy it.
yes, yes, yes. Let's support the other side of Mr. Sal, being a painter and being an author. So, Mr. Sal, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Daniel. I appreciate it.
Tune in next week. Another masterpiece of Mr. Sal we can scrutinize.
Yes.
More to come, people. More to come, people. See you soon.
Thank you.